So, if you're at all interested in WoW or MMORPGs in general, you've probably been seeing a lot of posts recently about this lovely number. This is the first transmog outfit, the full outfit, being added to WoW's cash shop, and has really sparked a lot of anger in the community and has been discussed a lot in the past week. Now, for myself personally, this sparked another conversation that I've been wanting to have for some time, and that is which MMORPG has the worst cash shop. And in today's video, that's exactly what we hope to answer. Welcome back to TinyBlueGames. My name's of course Seesaw or Chris, and today we're talking about MMORPGs in 2020. It's been a little while since we've done an MMO comparison, and if you haven't been there for our past ones, it's pretty much where we just take a bunch of popular MMOs and compare them based on one specific topic. As discussed at the intro, this topic is the worst cash shop. The MMOs that we're looking at today are some of the bigger ones such as World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, The Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2, and Black Desert Online. As with our past comparison videos, we'll take a look at each individual MMORPG, and then at the end we will have a brief discussion about which MMO I think deserves the title of the worst MMORPG cash shop. I would also encourage you to share your own thoughts in the comments below. Maybe you do agree with me, or maybe you don't, and there's a game that I haven't even mentioned in this video that has a super bad cash shop that you want to bring up. Either way, I'd love to hear them in the comments below, and hey, while you're down there, why not toss the video a like? It really does help out the channel in terms of getting discovered here on YouTube. The last thing I should mention is that I am an ArenaNet or Guild Wars 2 partner. Does this mean I won't say anything bad about Guild Wars 2? No, in fact, when we get to that section of this video, you will see me say the good and the bad about Guild Wars 2's cash shop. What it does mean though is that there are two sponsored links in the description below. If you use them to either try the game for free or purchase the expansions, you will be helping out the channel. So before we start talking about each individual game, I wanted to talk about cash shops in general, because I think as players it's really easy to see cash shops as purely evil, as in they have no good value whatsoever, and to a point that's completely fair because yeah, they're taking content that could be in the game and monetizing it on top of the way the game's already monetized. Now, we're going to be looking at a variety of games, some of which are subscription-based, some of which are buy-to-play, and some of them have a very low entry fee to play. And with that in mind, some of these games are monetized through the cash shop very differently than the others. So I guess what I'm trying to say is when we look at each individual game, we need to look at how they are currently being monetized, how much the cash shop is a part of their monetization strategy, and how transparent they are being with the use of their cash shop throughout the game. Because I think all of those combined is what gives the player either a good feeling about the cash shop or a less good feeling about the cash shop. With that said though, let's get into our first game. I think we'll start off the video with Guild Wars 2 because I've actually used the Guild Wars 2 cash shop probably the most out of all of the cash shops on this list. And I want to be clear here, I typically don't use the cash shop in most games, so my experience with it comes from the point of view of someone who is typically trying to spend as little in-game as possible. Now, the first thing to note with Guild Wars 2's cash shop is that it is very well integrated into the game itself. And what I mean by that is that it feels like it is a part of the world. For instance, you aren't necessarily berated with a bunch of marketing stuff when you log into the game, but whenever you go to use the trading post or the auction house in Guild Wars 2, you kind of have to go near the cash shop, or the gem store as they call it. And because of this, the cash shop feels very involved with the game. It feels like another tab of the actual in-game auction house, and it feels very linked to the actual way the market works. The other part of this is that it's kind of woven into the story of the game as well. We have a lot of talk about the Black Lion Trading Company and the new items that they are bringing to the world of Tyria. So in terms of immersion, I think the game has done really well of making it not feel like just a gimmicky shop. Now, you buy items from the gem store with gems, and this is actually a really important part, and it's something we're going to talk about with each of the following cash shops, is whenever you have money or a currency that isn't actual money, so for instance, you go from dollars to gems, you go from dollars to pearls, or dollars to some other currency, you're more inclined typically to spend more on those items, because your brain's not necessarily thinking, hey, this costume costs $10, your brain's thinking, hey, this costume costs 800 gems or something like that. So it is a tactic that is being used on you. Now, typically, there is at least one of these transitions that happens in most games. Like, most games will not have the dollar value associated with the item in plain dollars. They'll have gems, they'll have pearls, they'll have something else. Some games will go above and beyond, and they'll have, gems that convert to stars that convert to this, and the more conversions there are, typically the more customers are not going to think about the actual price in dollars, and that's good for the game devs to get more money. The really good thing that I think Guild Wars 2 does is that it allows players to use in-game gold to purchase gems, and because of this, you can technically grind your way through the actual game through doing different events, different bosses, different whatever, and you can earn enough in-game gold to convert to gems to get anything you want off the gem store. So technically, anything in the gem store is accessible to players. And you're probably thinking, yeah, they say that, but it's going to take hours and hours and hours of grinding. Well, yeah, it does take a lot of gameplay, but I'd say in Guild Wars 2, it's a lot more reasonable to grind your way to gem store items than it is in a lot of other games. I've done it a few times myself, and I think it does feel pretty good when you do it. The flip side of this, though, is that you can use real-world money to get in-game gold, and because of that, you can buy a lot of power with real-world money. Now, Guild Wars 2 is a little bit strange where it doesn't have a vertical progression system, and because of that, a lot of people have been capped out at the max stats for quite some time, and it's typically not that difficult to get to max stats. So it's really not that big of a problem for people to be able to buy their way there because, hey, it's not that hard to get there in game itself. Whereas with vertical progression games, if you could just keep, buying the top item or paying to keep increasing your power, and it just became bigger and bigger and bigger, not only would you be spending tons and tons of money, but it would give a really, really big advantage to those who are willing to spend that money versus those that are not. So I'd say there is a advantage to spending money in Guild Wars 2, but it might not be as large as some of the other MMOs on this list. So the final thing I want to talk about with Guild Wars 2 is the actual types of items that you'll find on the cash shop. And these typically are cosmetic items or convenience items for your account, and they do have a lot of really good items, I'd say, that a lot of games don't do in terms of convenience, such as inventory slots that can be shared amongst different characters. I don't think there are many other games that do that, and it does add a whole new level of convenience to your account, and it feels like a really good gem store item. There are some outfits, obviously. Typically, outfits in Guild Wars 2 range from $10 to $15 Canadian. I'm just going to do prices in my own currency. But yeah, that's a pretty low end in terms of the other games we're going to be talking about here, so they're pretty reasonable, and with that, pretty easy to earn in-game themselves. They do have some items that are more of a random chance of getting what you want, which is less of a good thing. You have the black line chests where you have a chest and you can view everything that has a chance to drop from in it, but some of them have very low chances of coming out. Typically, there are ways to get these items. Either you can buy them out directly or you can buy them at a later date for different tokens or something like that. So usually you can earn items, but if you're someone who wants it right away, you might find yourself going through a few chests. And there's also this kind of system with a random adopt amount license where you have a chance of getting various mount skins, and you could have to use it a few times to get the one you want, as opposed to maybe just purchasing a different mount skin that you really like, and you can buy it out right away, but it is more expensive. So they do have some systems that aren't so great, but they typically have ways that you can get what you want if you work around them. Next, we're going to talk about ESO, or the Elder Scrolls Online if you prefer. Their gem store works very similarly, I'd say, to Guild Wars 2. They have dollar values that go into crowns. They call the crown store, and you buy things with crowns. So there is that one level of conversion that does happen. The game is, I would say, a little bit more pushy in terms of showing you what's in their store. For instance, the launcher will typically have a lot of promotional stuff on it, and even when you come into the game, you're presented kind of with more of a informational piece that does have some stuff about events going on and daily rewards, but it will typically show you some featured items as well. So it, I would say, is a little bit more focused on that than some other games. The big difference with ESO is how it is monetized. Now, it is a buy-to-play game technically, like Guild Wars 2. The big difference, though, is that you also have an optional subscription that you can get called ESO Plus. And with ESO Plus, you get a certain amount of crowns per month. I think it's per month, or maybe it's all at once, I'm not sure. But you get some crowns to spend on the gem store as well. So you kind of get like an allowance of sorts to get items from the crown store while you are an active subscriber, which is, I'd say, a really cool way to reward subscribed members, because it does make it feel like you're paying for more of the content of the game in general, which I think is really cool. There are also sections in the store that have sales for ESO Plus members. So if you do have an active subscription, you get some deals on specific items as well. Now, also like Guild Wars 2, you are technically able to use in-game currency to buy crowns. This is something that the devs are openly okay with. The issue is that there is no official way of doing this. There's no conversion system that you can go in-game and say, hey, I have this amount of in-game gold, give me these many crowns. No, you have to actually trade it with other players. And this becomes an issue because you have to trust people on the internet, which, you know, not great. There are certain ways to do this better than others, such as specific guilds that are focused on these kind of transactions, as well as certain discords you can join to kind of help you find buyers and sellers a bit better with customer feedback, so you know that they aren't as sketchy as some of the random people you see in map chat. With all that said, though, there is still plenty of scamming that goes on, and it definitely does not feel nearly as comfortable as an actual in-game system that you can use to do it. In terms of the actual items on the cash shop, they are pretty standard compared to most MMOs. You'll have different outfits, you'll have different mounts, different cosmetics, different quality of life items. I'd say one of the biggest differences is that you do have DLCs. So if you're not using the ESO Plus, their subscription, and you're just playing it with the base cost of the game, you can then go and buy DLC areas that would be included in the sub fee. You can buy those outright from the cash shop, and typically if you were to do that, it would cost you a fair bit to get all of the DLC items, or areas I should say. But if you wanted just one specific area or one specific DLC and you didn't want to pay a sub fee, it is a nice option to be able to purchase things in a different way. Now, one of the worst items, I'd say, well, it can be the worst or it can be the best item on the crown store, is the crown crates, and we all know how we feel about crates of some sort. Typically they're gonna just consume your currency and not give you anything pretty until that one that does, and then you keep chasing that high, and it's just a vicious cycle. The worst part, though, is that the crown crates area comes with its own seductive Khajiit to talk to you while you're doing the crate opening, and I feel like, you know, it is integrating it more into the game. We talked about this with Guild Wars 2, that it does make it feel like it's a more immersed into the game, because you do have a specific character that's voiced, and it feels good, but it definitely lures you in. So you know, watch yourself when you're talking to them. Moving on, we're going to talk about World of Warcraft. Now, this is the whole thing that sparked the idea for this video, and I think what's particularly interesting about this whole situation is that I had never been in World of Warcraft's cash shop until this outfit came out. Now, don't get me wrong, I haven't gone and bought the outfit or anything, but I was really curious to see what exactly they sell in their cash shop, because, well, you know, the elephant in the room here is that they do have a subscription fee that you need to pay per month, and you'd think that that would be enough money for the company. So whereas the Elder Scrolls Online, if you're paying their sub fee, you do get kind of an allowance to their cash shop. You don't get anything like that in World of Warcraft. You are just paying your monthly sub fee and then saying, hey, I have some more money, what else can you give me? Now, to be fair, out of all of the cash shops that we're looking at here, the WoW cash shop offers the least amount of stuff you can purchase. Like there's very limited stuff. It is primarily focused on account services, and that is typically what it was way back when, as it would be where you could go and transfer characters, change names and stuff like that. But as time's gone on, they're like, hey, let's slip a few pets in here, let's slip a few mounts in here. A really big one that they've done is whenever they have a promotion to renew kind of your 6-month subscription fee, you will get then sort of a cosmetic mount or something to go along with it. And that's how this new outfit is kind of being introduced. The big thing here though is that there is now a transmog section and the outfit's in there and you can purchase it just, by itself. So we are kind of opening the gates here for more stuff to come in, specifically if we see the community purchase this and sort of signal to Blizzard, hey, we are willing to pay money for this stuff. It could be a very slippery slope, which definitely isn't ideal. The outfit itself is $20, actually no, it's $25 Canadian, which is significantly higher than a lot of the other outfits we were looking at in the last 2 games, and the mounts themselves are even more at about 30. So things are pretty pricey in the actual store, and one of the big things that you've probably already noticed is that the prices are listed in my currency versus, gems or crowns or something like that. We have Canadian dollars. So it is full on like a online store. And I do respect this in some regards because as a consumer, you are full on transparent being like, hey, this is what you're gonna buy in addition to your sub or something like that. Another point that should be mentioned, and it's a little bit less obvious with World of Warcraft versus other games, is that you can in fact trade in-game gold to buy things off the cash shop. You would do this with the WoW token system. Now, this is nice because it does allow you to earn cash shop stuff with in-game activities. The downside though is no matter what happens here, someone is paying an additional amount of money on top of their sub fee to get a piece of content that could just be delivered in-game as a normal reward. From World of Warcraft, I figured we'd jump into Final Fantasy XIV because in a lot of ways they are in the same boat. They are both sub-based games that are asking for additional money on top of the subscription for cosmetic items. Now, there are a few things I think Final Fantasy XIV does well, and a few things that I think they don't do as well. One really standout part, though, is that the cash shop is in no way in the actual game. I was actually really confused about this, and this was my first time venturing to the cash shop since I started about 1.5 years ago. I was looking through all the systems, all the menus, I was like, where is their cash shop? And as it turns out, you actually have to go online to the MOG station, log into your account, and that is where you'll make your purchases. So this is probably the cash shop that feels the most distanced from the actual gameplay. And with that said, they do have prices listed in different currencies and the ability to switch your currency at the top. That being said, Canadian dollars were not one of the options, so kind of sad. Their store does have a lot more items than the World of Warcraft store. I think one of the best parts is that they do call them optional items, and I think that's a really good signal to players that, hey, these are optional things. You shouldn't feel like you need to buy them. That being said, if we take a step back, there are some worrisome items in general. So we have outfits and stuff like that, and the outfits were a bit more expensive than I was expecting. These outfits typically ranged from $20 to $30, which I guess is in the same range as World of Warcraft, but a lot more expensive than some of the games that actually do more heavily rely on gem store purchases. The other big thing, and I think this is one of the core subjects of controversy in Final Fantasy XIV, is that there are items to skip story in the cash shop. So if you've never played Final Fantasy XIV, you might have heard that it can be long and tedious, and when they're saying that, they're not saying leveling is long and tedious. Leveling is actually pretty consistent with a lot of other MMOs. What's long and tedious is the main scenario quests, and these are the quests you have to do. There's no optional about this. You have to do them to be able to do endgame content. And there are, certain sections for each of the different expansions, and you have to go through them, unless you buy the ability to skip the story from the MOG station. And these were pretty expensive as well. These were between, I think, like $10 and $25. It's more expensive for the more current main scenario quest that you could skip, and I didn't see one for the newest expansion unless I was just looking in the wrong area, but it seems like you can only do this up to the past expansion, so that would be Stormblood in this scenario. But it's definitely an item that doesn't feel great, because it's like, hey, you could just make the main scenario quest not required, and then you wouldn't need to sell these items to some people. So I can see the ugliness there. I think it is nice that they do offer an option around it. And on top of that, although tedious, I think the main scenario quest is definitely worth doing. I think if you were to play Final Fantasy XIV and want to skip all of the main scenario quest, well, you're skipping most of the good part of the game. You're skipping a lot of what makes Final Fantasy XIV such a good game. So it is kind of one of those things that, like, I do get it from an MMO player, maybe you just want to jump in and go play with some friends at endgame, but it is doing yourself a disservice. One of the more unique parts of Final Fantasy's cash shop is a lot of the cosmetics that you purchase are old event cosmetics. So what they'll typically do is you'll have an event like Halloween or something like that, where there are specific items that you can earn, but only during the event itself. And once it's gone, those items are gone, until they might reappear in the cash shop. So a lot of these items are assets that might have already been created for different reasons, and because of that, it doesn't take as much development time as some other games. And I think that is one of the parts that feels the worst about cash shops, is whenever we see a huge update with a bunch of new skins in the cash shop, and then we see a raid come out with a bunch of ugly skins that all look the same, we're like, okay, so where did the time go between these two projects? So I think that is nice that they do reuse some of the old costumes that you could get back in the day, so players who did do that have them already, and at the same time, it allows new players joining the game who are like, oh man, I wish I was there 2 years ago. You still have the option perhaps to get this at a later date. The final game on our list is Black Desert Online, and I know a lot of you are already like, whoa, Black Desert Online, you want to talk about cash shops? But to be fair, there are some good things I think Black Desert Online does, and some less good things. So let's look at the most obvious points here, is that Black Desert Online is a game that is known for having a very low starting point price. Like, to buy the actual game, it's quite low. It's even sometimes $0. But it's a game that does encourage people to spend more money once they've started playing, and certainly once they get higher up in the game. And one of the big ones, for those of you who've never played the game, is buying pets. Pets allow you to loot creatures way quicker, which is very essential if you are playing the game for a long time, because what you mostly do is you grind creatures and loot them. So if you're able to do that a lot quicker, that is a huge convenience to the overall gameplay loop of the game. That being said, if you were to buy the base game and then set yourself up with a few pets, you'd probably be paying the same amount that you would pay for a typical MMO. So it kind of does even out in that sense. I'd say there are some essential, and I'm doing some air quotes when I say essential items, because technically you don't need to buy anything, but there are some essential items you could get that would probably put the price point of BDO on the same point as a lot of other MMOs that we've talked about here. Now, there are obviously a lot of other things that you can buy in the game, and looking through their cash shop, I think they had one of the most robust cash shops out of all of the ones we've looked at here. Now, I've actually never purchased anything off the BDO cash shop myself, and to be fair, I've not purchased stuff off most of the other cash shops we've talked about here, so I still have very limited experience. But one of the first things that did jump out to me is when you do log into the game, they do kind of have a promotional thing that comes up in the bottom right of your screen, and it'll show you sort of like a new featured outfit or something like that. It's not terribly intrusive, but there is that sort of sales pitchy view of it, whereas maybe the ESO information card gives some more information about general gameplay stuff as well. The other thing I did notice is that instead of just going from dollars to pearls, you're actually going from dollars to cacao cash to pearls in this game. So there is kind of two conversions that are happening, and as if you remember at the start of the video, the more times this happens, the easier it is to spend in-game currency, and that is one of the downsides, I'd say, to the entire cash shop itself. Now, the good thing here is, from what I could tell, is that the currency converts at a pretty easy to understand rate, so it's not like some crazy rates between the two that really try to obscure things. It's very close to 1-to-1 for a lot of these, which almost makes me wonder why they're doing it, but they are doing it to try and get more money out of your pockets, which is fine. That's what the cash shop's for. Not that it's any more fun when you realize how much money you spent on things. The game does offer quite a few free cash shop items for you to use. You get certain loyalty points to buy stuff as well, and a lot of games have done this, and I haven't talked about this as much in some of the other MMOs we've covered, but it's very typical standard practice to offer some free items from the cash shop to kind of wet your beak, as it were. But I'd say that BDO offers the most amount of these from what I've been able to see, though ESO does do quite a few through their daily login rewards as well. The final point I wanted to talk about with Black Desert Online is that you are technically able to get a lot of the things on the cash shop with in-game currency. And the way you do this in this game, from what I understand, is that you buy them off of their marketplace or auction house, as you will. You buy the actual item. So instead of buying the currency or pearls or whatever, you go and buy the cash shop item being sold by someone on the market. And that person is trying to take real world money and get in-game currency. You're trying to take in-game currency and get a cash shop item. So it's a bit less of a clean system. I'd actually much prefer some of the other ones that just transfer the currency. The big reason here is that it's probably going to be a lot less efficient, because you actually have to hope that someone's selling the specific item that you want. In terms of the actual items as well, you know, if you're trying to get in-game currency, you have to kind of do some research to find what's the highest price, and it's just a messier system in general. The other issue is that you have to farm a lot of currency to get these items, so it does take quite a while if there is something that you want. So there you have it, 5 MMOs, 5 different cash shops, and 5 very different ways of doing things. The question remains, which one do I think is the worst cash shop? And I've thought about this for quite some time, and initially when I was making this video, I was leaning towards Black Desert Online, because I tended to have sort of obscured views of what the cash shop wants. And to be fair, it does have the double conversion of currency, which is a tactic to get you to spend more, and it does encourage you to spend a fair bit on the cash shop. But looking at the overall picture, I'm actually leaning towards World of Warcraft, and there are 2 very distinct reasons for this. Number 1, World of Warcraft makes a ton of money from their subscription fee and probably doesn't need any additional money from their cash shop. In addition to that, as time's gone on, specifically with playing Battle for Azeroth, I'd say some of the cosmetic rewards from raids and stuff like that have gone downhill. When I look back at other expansions like, Cataclysm and Wrath of the Lich King, the amount and diversity of armor sets we were getting was much higher. So it seems weird for me for the game to introduce new cosmetics that they have time to create in their item store at a time when the game has less actual cosmetics to earn in-game. But that's just, it's very opinion-based, and that could be completely different depending on who you are. The other thing, looking at it as a consumer who really enjoys cash shops, which I'm not, but if I was, the cash shop itself kind of sucks. It's very limited. There's a transmog, tab, and if you click on that, there's only one item there, which looks really weird for a game that's so big. I'm not saying, hey, Blizzard, go fill this up, but it's a very lackluster system in terms of the actual way most of the game looks. It looks like they didn't put all of the time and effort into it, which once again is kind of good that they didn't, but if you're gonna put it in, maybe you should put that time and effort to make it feel more integrated and feel like a bigger part of the game. This is, of course, just my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to share what you think about these cash shops, or if there's a game that you think either does a really good job or a really bad job with their cash shop. I'd love to hear that in the comments as well. With that said, if if you're interested in more videos like this, more general MMO content, be sure to toss this video a like and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.